Let's start with a confession. If you are under the age of 28, you have been gaslit your entire life. You've been told that the reason you are anxious, the reason you feel precarious, the reason you don't own a home is a moral failing. You've been told you buy too much coffee. You've been told you don't want to work. You've been told you're quiet quitting because you're lazy. But deep down, you've suspected something else. You've suspected that the rules of the game have fundamentally changed while you were sitting at the table. You've suspected that no matter how hard you hustle, the goalposts aren't just moving, they are being dismantled and sold for scrap metal. Well, today we are going to stop guessing. We are going to stop talking about feelings, and we are going to talk about arithmetic. Because the terrifying truth isn't that the system is broken. The terrifying truth is that the system is working exactly as it was designed to, and the math proves unequivocally that you cannot save your way out of this. Welcome to the data of your despair. Let's look at the cornerstone of the American dream, or whatever version of it exists in the West today, housing. In 1980, the average home price in the United States was roughly $47,000. The median household income was about $21,000. Do the math. A house cost roughly two times your annual salary. If you saved diligently, you could put 20% down with about 1 year's worth of focused saving. It was hard, but it was mathematically possible. Fast forward to 2024. The median home price has exploded to over $420,000. In major cities where the actual jobs are, it's double that. But the median individual income, it's hovering around $40,000 to $50,000 for Gen Z workers. The ratio has shifted from 2:1 to nearly 8:1 or 10:1. This isn't inflation. This is strangulation. When pundits ask why Gen Z isn't buying homes, they are ignoring the basic liquidity crisis. To afford that same starter home today, you don't need to skip Starbucks. You need to skip eating. Let's run the numbers on a standard down payment. To save $80,000, $20% of a $400K home, while paying an average rent of $2,000 a month, student loans, and inflated grocery prices, a Gen Z worker saving 10% of their income, which is optimistic, would need roughly 24 years to save for the down payment alone. By the time you save the money, you'll be 50, and thanks to asset inflation, that house will cost $1. $2 million. This is why you see doom spending. When the big goal, the house, is mathematically impossible, the rational economic decision is to spend your money on small joys. A nice dinner, a trip, a new phone, because saving it actually loses you value. You aren't being irresponsible. You are reacting logically to a hyperinflationary asset environment. Then there is the barrier to entry, education. Boomers and Gen X love to tell you to learn a skill. In 1970, you could pay for a year of tuition at a public university by working a summer job at minimum wage. That is a factual statement. You could flip burgers for 3 months and buy a year of education. Today, to pay for 1 year of college tuition at the minimum wage, you would have to work roughly 2,500 hours. That is more than a full-time job. You literally cannot work enough hours in the day to pay for school while going to school. So you take the loans. You enter the workforce with a negative net worth of $30,000 to $100,000. You start the race 50 meters behind the starting line, carrying a lead backpack. And here is the kicker: the college wage premium, the extra money you earn for having a degree, is shrinking. We have flooded the market with degrees, devaluing the very asset you went into debt to purchase. You are paying luxury prices for a commodity product. In economic terms, this is a bad investment. But you are forced to make it because the alternative, no degree, is increasingly unviable in a credential-obsessed labor market. It is a pincer movement, damned if you do, destitute if you don't. But surely if you work harder, you make more, right? That's the capitalist promise. Let's look at the productivity pay gap. Since 1979, productivity, how much value you create for your boss, has grown by roughly 65%. You are working harder, faster, and more efficiently than any human beings in history. You have Slack, Zoom, email, AI tools. You are a productivity machine. But hourly compensation, it has grown by roughly 18% in that same time frame, adjusted for inflation. Where did the rest go? Where is the gap between the 65% value you created and the 18% you were paid? It didn't vanish. It was transferred. It went to shareholders, to stock buybacks, and to executive compensation. This is the silent robbery. Every time you stay late at the office, every time you answer an email on the weekend, you are donating your labor to the capital class. You are not building your future. You are subsidizing their retirement. The math shows that hard work no longer correlates with upward mobility, it correlates with higher corporate profits. Finally, we have to talk about the subscription of life. In previous generations, you bought things. You bought a car. You bought a record. You bought software. You own them. Today, Gen Z is the first generation to exist in a completely rent-seeking economy. You don't own your music. You rent it from Spotify. You don't own your software. You rent it from Adobe. You will likely never own your home. You will rent it from BlackRock. This is the death of ownership. It means your monthly burn rate, the amount of money you need just to exist, is significantly higher than previous generations. You are bleeding cash via 1,000 tiny cuts every single month. When you combine the housing impossibility, the education debt trap, the stagnant wages despite high productivity, and the shift to a rental economy, the conclusion is bleak but clear. You aren't broke because you bought a latte. You are broke because the mathematical formula for survival has been rewritten to ensure you remain a permanent debtor. The numbers don't lie. You are running on a treadmill that is set to speed you cannot match, and the people controlling the dial are wondering why you look so tired. But if the math is this obvious, why hasn't it been fixed? Why does the system continue to grind you down? That's because this isn't an accident. In part 2, we're going to look at the architecture of this trap. We're going to expose the history, the policies, and the specific decisions that were made to ensure Gen Z stays poor. We looked at the math. We established that the numbers don't add up for Gen Z. But the most dangerous lie you can believe right now is that this is just bad luck. You might think, oh, the economy is just cyclical and we're in a down cycle. No, the economy isn't weather. It doesn't just happen. The economy is an engine. It is built, tuned, and steered by specific mechanics. And for the last 40 years, the mechanics, politicians, central bankers, and corporate lobbyists have been stripping parts from your future to fuel their present. This wasn't a mistake. It was a heist. To understand why you can't save your way out, you have to look at the blueprint of the trap. We have to go back to the moment the social contract was shredded. Host on camera, the first nail in the coffin was hammered in during the 1970s. Before this, corporations generally operated under stakeholder capitalism. The idea was that a company had a duty to its workers, its community, and its customers, not just its investors. Then came the Friedman Doctrine. Economist Milton Friedman argued that a corporation's only social responsibility is to increase its profits. This philosophy infected Wall Street like a virus. Suddenly, wages were no longer an investment in talent. They were a cost to be cut. Layoffs became a way to boost stock prices. The goal shifted from building a great product to maximizing quarterly returns. This is why your job feels so precarious today. You aren't a human being to the algorithm. You are a line item on a spreadsheet that is currently lowering the earnings per share. If firing you raises the stock price by 0.5%, the system demands you be fired. Gen Z is entering a workforce where loyalty is structurally impossible because the system rewards volatility. If the 70s changed the philosophy, 2008 broke the mechanism. When the financial crisis hit caused by banks gambling with regular people's mortgages, the government had a choice. They could have bailout out the homeowners. They could have prosecuted the bankers. Instead, they invented quantitative easing. In plain English, the Federal Reserve printed trillions of dollars and injected it directly into the financial system. They bought bonds and mortgage-backed securities to prop up the markets. Here is why this destroyed Gen Z. That money didn't go into your paycheck. It went into assets. It inflated the price of stocks and real estate. If you already owned assets, boomers and Gen X, you got richer. Your house value doubled. Your 401k skyrocketed. But if you didn't own assets, millennials and Gen Z, the price of entry just doubled. The government effectively devalued your labor to protect their assets. They sacrificed the purchasing power of the young to protect the net worth of the old. This is why the stock market can be at an all-time high while you are struggling to buy groceries. The stock market is not the economy. The stock market is a graph of how much inflation the rich have successfully captured. Host on camera, now let's talk about the housing cartel. We mentioned in part 1 that housing is mathematically impossible. Why? Is it because we forgot how to build houses? No, it is because existing homeowners act as a cartel. It is called NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Local zoning laws in North America and much of Europe are designed specifically to create artificial scarcity. Boomers bought homes for cheap, and then they attended city council meetings for 30 years to make it illegal to build affordable housing nearby. They banned apartments, they banned high-rises, they invented historical preservation rules for buildings that aren't historic, all to ensure that supply stays low so prices stay high. They treat their homes as investment vehicles, not shelter. And for an investment to go up, it must be scarce. Gen Z is homeless or stuck renting not because there isn't enough land, but because it is literally illegal to build the homes you can afford. The ladder wasn't just pulled up. It was burned and the ashes were zoned for single-family residents only. Then there is the gatekeeper, the credit score. Did you know the FICO score wasn't invented until 1989? Your grandparents bought homes without an algorithm judging their moral worthiness. Today, the credit score is a system of social control. It forces you to participate in the debt economy. To get a high score, you must have debt. You must use credit cards. If you are responsible and pay in cash, you are a ghost to the system. This forces Gen Z into the banking system early. You are coerced into taking on consumer debt just to prove you are worthy of taking on mortgage debt later. It is a gamified system where the only way to win is to pay interest to the bank. It is the admission ticket to the middle class, and the price is financial surveillance. Finally, we have to address the elephant in the room, the gerontocracy. Ruled by the old. The average age of a U.S. senator is over 64. The people writing the laws for the digital economy barely understand how Wi-Fi works. But more importantly, politicians respond to voters who vote. And who votes? Retirees. This creates a feedback loop where government spending is funneled toward the elderly Social Security, Medicare pensions, while investments in the young education, childcare infrastructure are slashed. We are spending the national credit card to pay for the past, leaving Gen Z with the bill. Every dollar of national debt is a tax on your future earnings. You are being born into a mortgage you didn't sign for in a house you don't own, to pay for the retirement of the people who evicted you. The system isn't broken. It's working perfectly for the people who built it. It is an extraction machine designed to siphon wealth from labor, you to capital them. So if the math is impossible, part 1, and the system is rigged, part 2, what is the move? Do we give up? Do we burn it down? Or is there a different way to play a game that was designed for you to lose? We're going to look at the future. We're going to drop the optimism and look at the dark, stoic reality of how Gen Z can survive the great wealth transfer. If you have made it this far, you now understand the mechanics of the trap. You know the math is impossible, part 1, and the game is rigged, part 2. At this point, most video essays would pivot to toxic positivity. I am not going to do that. That would be lying to you. The brutal truth is this: the cavalry isn't coming. The politicians aren't going to fix the housing market, because doing so would destroy their own net worth. The corporations aren't going to raise wages out of the kindness of their hearts. The system will not self-correct until it collapses, and waiting for the collapse is a bad strategy. So how do you survive in an economy that wants to eat you alive? You don't try to win their game. You stop playing it. You adopt a strategy of economic insurgency. First, we must acknowledge the event horizon approaching, the great wealth transfer. Over the next 20 years, baby boomers will pass down roughly $84 trillion in assets. This sounds like good news, right? Wrong. This transfer will not be evenly distributed. It is going to create a permanent caste system within Gen Z. There will be two types of young people, those who inherit a house and those who rent from them forever. This is the neo-feudalism forecast. If you are not in line for a significant inheritance, you cannot rely on the traditional path. You are playing on hard mode. You need to accept, right now, that the timeline for your life will look different than your parents'. You might not buy a home until your 40s. You might never retire in the traditional sense. Once you accept the worst-case scenario, it loses its power over you. This is the Stoic foundation. If the worst happens, you are still breathing. Now let's look at the offensive strategies. Your first line of defense is strategic minimalism. I'm not talking about the aesthetic minimalism of rich people who own 3 items. I'm talking about lowering your burn rate as a survival tactic. The system is designed to keep you on a treadmill of consumption. If you need $4,000 a month just to survive car payments, subscriptions, clothes, expensive rent, you are a slave to your employer. You cannot take risks. You cannot quit your toxic job. You are fragile. But if you can hack your life to survive on $2,000 a month, you just bought your freedom. This is why quiet quitting terrified the establishment. It wasn't laziness. It was a rational withdrawal of labor. Gen Z is realizing that if the reward for hard work is just more debt, the logical move is to provide the minimum effective dose of work required to stay employed, and channel your remaining energy into your survival, not the company's growth. Reclaim your time. Reclaim your attention. Stop buying status symbols to impress people who are also broke. Every dollar you don't spend is a day of freedom you don't have to sell to a corporation. If the game is rigged where you live, move the board. This is called geo-arbitrage. It used to be for digital nomads and tech bros. Now it is a survival requirement for Gen Z. Why are you paying $3,000 a month for a shoebox in New York or London or Toronto if you work on a laptop? You are paying a premium location tax for a city that hates you. We are seeing a mass exodus of young people leaving high cost of living countries entirely. They are living like kings on a junior salary because they realize that geography is a variable, not a constant. If you cannot leave the country, you leave the city. The Tier 2 city strategy is the only way to escape the housing trap. You go where the capital isn't. You go where the boomers haven't inflated everything yet. You don't wait for New York to become affordable. You make Detroit or Tulsa cool. Finally, let's talk about income. The old advice was slow and steady wins the race. Save 10% in an index fund for 40 years. The math in part 1 showed us that inflation eats that strategy alive. You can't save your way to a house anymore. You need the barbell strategy. On one end of the bar, you play it safe. You keep your day job. You pay the bills. You don't take stupid risks with your rent money. On the other end of the bar, you take massive asymmetric risks. This means starting a business with zero overhead. Building a personal brand. Investing small amounts in high-volatility assets that could go to 0 or go to 100x. Not financial advice, just game theory. You need exposure to luck. Working a 9 to 5 provides zero exposure to luck. Your salary is capped. You need to position yourself in the digital economy where one viral video, one successful product launch, or one smart investment can jump you forward 10 years. You are looking for nonlinear outcomes to escape a linear trap. The system relies on your compliance. It relies on you taking out the loans, buying the car, fearing the boss, and watching the news. The most rebellious thing you can do in 2025 is to be debt-free, focused, and historically literate. They want you anxious. They want you doom-scrolling. Because if you are anxious, you are weak. So turn off the news. Look at the math. Make your plan. Lower your expenses. Build your skills. Find your tribe. The American dream is dead. Long live the new survivalism. Don't let them grind you down. Fade to black.